The room smelled of burnt cinnamon candles and sin. A silk sheet clung to Senator Bowler's sweaty chest as he lay sprawled on the hotel bed, his breath uneven. Adesua slid off him, her hips swaying as she reached for her black lace robe. She didn't need to look back to know his eyes followed her. They always did. "Ah, baby, you want kill me?" Bowler chuckled, rubbing his bald head. Adesua smiled lazily, tying her robe. "I told you, Senator, tonight go sweet past sugarcane." Bowler sighed deeply, satisfied. "I fit dash you anything for this, your golden body." She turned to him, her smile widening. Good. That was what she wanted to hear. Her eyes flickered to the small leather pouch hidden under the pillow, the charm Babalawo Tunde had given her years ago. She reached under the pillow, fingers grazing the rough leather. The juju had never failed her. Every lover's downfall became her profit. Bowler's phone buzzed on the nightstand. "My cam," he groaned, ignoring it. The next buzz was louder, then another, his brows furrowed as he reached for the phone. Adesua watched. Bowler's face twisted in confusion, then horror. "Jesus!" He sat up, his stomach wobbling. "My account! My offshore! My money! Everything don't go!" Adesua tilted her head. "Wetting happen? Somebody empty my account!" His voice cracked. "Over 10 billion naira!" "How?" The phone rang. His wife's name flashed on the screen, then another call, his political advisor. Then another, his press secretary. Then a WhatsApp message popped up. A photo of him, naked, tangled in silk sheets. The headline screamed, "Senator caught in hotel romp, wife leaks affair." His hands shook as he clicked on a link. Live on Channels TV, a reporter was saying, "We have confirmed reports that Senator Bowler's financial records have been leaked, exposing massive corruption. His career finished, his marriage destroyed, his billions gone." He turned to Adesua. But the bed was empty. The robe she had worn was still on the chair. The only thing left of her was the scent of burnt cinnamon and the ghost of her laughter. Somewhere in Lagos, Adesua walked into a bank, smirking as she transferred billions into her name. Adesua sat in the back seat of a black Range Rover, her manicured fingers tapping against her Birkin bag. The driver weaved through the streets of Lekki, the city lights casting flickering shadows on her caramel skin. She felt untouchable. Another conquest, another fortune. 10 billion naira now sat comfortably in her account. Senator Bowler's name was trending for all the wrong reasons, and his wife had filed for divorce before the sun could rise. Perfect. She pulled out her phone. A new message from Funky Adeyemi flashed on the screen. "Babe, where you day? I miss you. My husband don't travel." Adesua chuckled. Funky, a bored billionaire's wife, was her latest toy. Their affair was deliciously reckless. Secret trips to the Maldives, diamond gifts, whispers in hotel elevators. Funky had once sworn she'd leave her husband for her. Adesua knew better. She replied, "I go see you soon, my love." But before she could lock her phone, another message popped up. An unknown number. "Unknown, you think you're smart." Adesua frowned. She read the message again. Who was this? She ignored it. Probably a bitter man she had drained dry. She had enemies everywhere, but none of them could touch her. The car pulled up in front of her mansion, a white, glass-walled palace in Ikoyi. She stepped out, her Louboutin heels clicking against the pavement. The gateman, Osman, rushed to open the door. "Welcome, madam." She nodded, walking past the marble fountain into her grand living room. She poured herself a glass of Hennessy, her body sinking into the soft embrace of her Italian sofa. But something felt off. She glanced around. Everything was in place, the expensive paintings, the gold-trimmed furniture, but the air felt heavy, like something unseen was watching. Then bang! Her front door swung open violently. Usman screamed, his voice cut off mid-breath, and standing at the entrance was a woman in a deep purple boo-boo. Her presence filled the room like a storm. Ekanem. Adesua's grip tightened around her Hennessy glass as she locked eyes with Ekanem. The woman stood tall, unshaken, her deep purple boo-boo flowing like royal robes. Her skin was the color of polished ebony, her eyes sharp, calculating. Adesua forced a smirk. "Madam Ekanem, to what do I owe this surprise visit?" Usman lay on the ground outside, clutching his chest, his eyes rolling back. He wasn't dead, but he couldn't move. Juju. The air in the house felt thick, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Ekanem stepped inside. No invitation, no hesitation. I hear say you dey carry men and women chop clean mouth, Ekanem said, her voice smooth, dangerous. She placed a folded paper on the glass table. That's a list of your victims, your sins. Adesua's pulse quickened, but she kept her face blank. I have no idea what you're talking about. Ekanem smiled, slow and knowing. My ex-husband dey that list. You drained him, took his money, took his mind. Left him a mad man. Adesua's stomach twisted. Ekanem sat down, crossing her legs, adjusting her gold bangles. But I no come here for revenge. I come here with choice. Adesua raised an eyebrow, her fingers brushing the small leather pouch hidden under the cushion beside her. What choice? Ekanem leaned forward, her perfume thick with old herbs and secrets. You think say you be the only person we sabi juju? The only person we fit make men crawl? She let out a low chuckle. Your power they tied to your hips, no be so? My grandmother warned me about women like you. Adesua swallowed hard. Nobody had ever spoken to her like this before. Ekanem reached into her boo-boo and pulled out a small calabash, dark as midnight. This is my own juju, stronger than yours. For the first time in years, fear crawled up Adesua's spine. Ekanem smiled. Pick Adesua, confess or suffer. The lights flickered, the house groaned, and Adesua knew her reign was crumbling. Adesua's body trembled, her hips burning as if they were on fire. The sharp pain wasn't just physical, it was the weight of her sins, the full force of the world she had built coming crashing down on her. The room seemed to spin as Ekanem's calm presence anchored her in place. Adesua struggled to catch her breath. Her once powerful charm, the juju that had made men and women cower in her wake, was failing her. She was losing. Everything she had built was slipping away. Ekanem stood tall, hands clasped behind her, her face serene as though this was exactly what she had expected. You think you can control everything, Adesua? Ekanem's voice rang with authority, unwavering. But the price for manipulation is always higher than you expect. Adesua tried to speak, but her throat was tight, her body betraying her. Her fingers, once so skilled in handling her charms, trembled. The jupe pouch hidden beneath her dress felt heavier than ever. She reached for it, but the pain in her hips intensified, her entire body tensing as if being pulled by invisible forces. In that moment, Ekanem revealed the truth. She didn't need the juju, she had something more powerful. My grandmother's juju is older than yours, Adesua, and you'll never win this battle, she said softly, yet every word cut deeper than any blade. The room grew colder, and a gust of wind seemed to blow through the cracks in the walls. Ekanem raised her hand, and Adesua's body seized in agony. The energy between them crackled, a force far beyond what she had ever controlled. She was drowning in her own mistakes. As the pain overwhelmed her, Adesua's vision blurred. She could barely make out the figure of Dare, Ekanem's son, standing at the door watching. His eyes were filled with tears, but there was no pity in them, only disappointment. Why? Dare's voice echoed through the room, a soft cry for understanding. Why do you enjoy destroying families? His words pierced through the pain, shattering her defenses. She couldn't hide anymore. Adesua collapsed to her knees, the weight of everything she had done crashing down on her. She had hurt so many people, broken so many homes, and yet here she was, powerless, humiliated, and caught in the web of her own making. It was over. Ekanem stepped forward, her voice low but firm. Confess, Adesua. The truth has to come out. You'll give everything back. Adesua's breath came in ragged gasps. She could no longer fight the truth. She had to face it. With trembling hands, she stood, her knees unsteady. The crowd gathered in the hall before her, wives, husbands, victims, all watching. The elite of Lagos, the ones who once saw her as a goddess, now stared at her with disdain. My name is Adesua, and I've ruined so many lives. Her voice cracked, but she pressed on. I've taken your husbands, your wives, your money, your peace. She paused, her face hot with shame as she saw the wives in the front row glaring at her, their eyes full of hate. I've used juju to destroy you all. I took everything for myself, but now I see the truth, and I give it all back. The room went silent for a brief moment before the first slap rang out. It was Ekanem's wife, one of the many victims who had suffered because of Adesua's selfishness. She slapped her husband across the face, hard, the sound echoing throughout the hall. This is for every woman you betrayed, she screamed, her face red with fury. Another wife stood, tears streaming down her face. You took my family. My children don't even remember what their father was like before you poisoned him. She pointed at her husband, who was shaking, ashamed. I'm leaving. You and her both. Husbands stood, some pointing at their wives, their faces contorted with rage. You too, one man shouted. I knew you were hiding something. Divorce. It's over. The air was thick with chaos. Betrayal was everywhere. But in that moment, Adesua stood, broken and defeated. The truth had set her free, but it had also destroyed her. She opened her phone and began to transfer every kobo of stolen money back to the rightful owners, each transaction a painful step towards her reckoning. The crowd erupted as she made her confession. Some cheered, others wept. The camera captured everything, the wives slapping their husbands, husbands divorcing their wives, the fall of a woman who had once been invincible. But as the final transfer went through, and Adesua dropped to her knees, she felt the weight of the world lift. The truth was out, and with it, her empire crumbled. It was a week after the town hall, and Adesua was no longer the woman who had once owned Lagos. Gone were the silk sheets, the expensive cars, the designer clothes. Gone were the powerful men who bowed at her feet, the luxury that had been hers for the taking. Now she walked along a dusty road in Benin, her body hunched under the weight of the humiliation she had suffered. She wore a faded buba and iro, her face bare of makeup. Her once golden hips now ached, not from the juju, but from the memories of her fall. The whispers followed her everywhere. People stared, some mocked her, others shook their heads. She was no longer feared. Adesua stood before a small roadside stall, the smell of roasted plantains filling the air. The open flames crackled as she turned the plantains with a wooden stick, her hands rough and calloused from a life of struggle. She was just another woman now. She had lost everything, the money, the fame, the love of men, and she had gained nothing in return. But as the afternoon sun dipped low in the sky, a familiar face appeared. It was a young woman, barely in her 20s, with a tight dress that clung to her curves in all the right ways. Her hips swayed like they were made of silk. The same old look, the same old tricks. The woman smiled as she approached a government official sitting by the roadside exchanging flirtatious words. Adesua's heart sank. She recognized the man, the Commissioner for Education, a man with the same appetite as the ones she used to take down. The woman was already playing her game. Adesua watched them for a moment, then let out a low sigh. It hurt, seeing the next generation of women being swept up in the same cycle she had once embraced. She knew that the same juju, the same tricks, could take them to the heights she had once soared to, but it would only end in ruin. With a deep breath, Adesua turned away. She had no power now, no magic, no riches, no influence. But there was still something in her, something she hadn't lost completely. Adesua walked home slowly, her heart heavy. She passed a billboard on the side of the road. It was of Ekanem, now smiling brightly, her face plastered on every corner of the city. The words below read, "The People's Redeemer." Adesua smiled faintly, the tiniest hint of pride in her eyes. Ekanem had won. As she kept walking, she passed a small market. A man in his late 40s called out to her, "Auntie, your plantain are the best." Adesua nodded, her lips curling into a genuine smile. It wasn't much, but it was real. She wasn't the queen of Lagos anymore. She wasn't even the woman who had brought men to their knees. But maybe, just maybe, she had something better now. Peace. She walked on, her bare feet touching the earth beneath her, the last trace of the juju fading away with every step. And as the sun set behind her, Adesua whispered a prayer to herself, the words from her childhood rising up from deep within her. Amore Kagbe, let your child find light. For the first time in years, Adesua felt the weight lift from her soul.